Namaste. I'm Nikita, and if you've been following me for a while, then you'll know that I talk a lot about healing, well-being, and personal development. But what I'm most passionate about is guiding people on a journey from karma to Dharma. Have you heard the saying that whatever's going on in our internal world is reflected in our external world? Well, I had heard this saying, but I didn't quite understand what it meant until recently. I realized that lots of clients were coming to me who were on the cusp. The cusp of what, you might be wondering? Well, the cusp between their karma and their dharma. They were in that in-between stage. I like to call it limbo land. You can also think of the analogy of a bridge. So they're crossing over from one aspect of life to another. Now this might be a change in circumstance, moving abroad, a relationship breakdown, or any other significant life transition. What this made me realize is that I myself was going through a life transition, but I didn't realize it. And how is that even possible? How can we be going through something and not even know about it? Well, we can if we are oblivious, which is what I was. For the last few years, I've been living in denial. I've been convincing myself that I've already been living my Dharma, whereas the truth is that I was holding on to my karma. In today's podcast, I'm going to share a very personal journey. And if you have been following me and showing an interest in my journey, then you'll know that for a long time I've not uploaded a podcast, and that's because I was going through this transitional phase. Maybe you're feeling like you're stuck in a loop with the same emotions, same relationships, and same inner battles. If so, this podcast today is for you. If you've done the journaling, the meditations, maybe even therapy, yoga, you've bought the crystals, but you're still in the same place, feeling stuck, this is for you. If you're tired, if you're craving peace, if something within you just feels off, deep down, if you know that you're meant for more, this is for you. Today I'm going to talk to you about my personal journey from karma to dharma. And now when I think about it, it's from surviving to truly living. So I've been supporting people's journeys for, I would say, 20 years. It was 2005 that I first started my dance school, and it was so much more to me than just dance. I used to teach children, teenagers, and adults up until the COVID-19 pandemic, where my dance company carried on doing classes, but I took a step back. Instead, I started focusing on Reiki healing, personal development, and coaching. I found that my passion was so much more lit up when I was in those areas. And it reminded me of how I was in the early stages when I first started my dance career, particularly as a performer. And as much as I love teaching and I really like the students, I didn't feel like I was making as much impact with dance as I was with the other areas of my new business. So I decided to take a step back from my dance school, to take on teachers and employ staff, and to really go all in with Journey with Nikita. However, balancing both businesses was a challenge. I felt torn and pulled in different directions. And like I said, I was in denial. I kept telling myself that this was supposed to be my life, that dance and the dance school was part of my Dharma, and I had to persevere. Even though I was watching other coaches saying that when you're living in your purpose, everything should feel effortless. But for me, it wasn't effortless. I was showing up at my dance school feeling contracted, and yet I was at my Dharma workshops and energy healing treatments feeling expansive. There was a clear disconnect between me. It was almost like I had two personalities, two identities that were battling against each other. I often talk to my clients about lower self and higher self. When I was in my dance school, I was in my lower self. I felt judged, I felt intimidated, and that wasn't because other people were making me feel that way. It's because I was feeling that way. My feelings were suppressed. I wasn't able to talk and share with people how I felt. And if I tried to, they would just dismiss me and say, "What do you have to worry about? You have a successful business. You should be happy. In this climate, you should be really proud of yourself for everything you've achieved. You have nothing to complain about." And yet, when I was in my other brand, Journey with Nikita, I was lit up. I was in my higher self and very much aligned with what I wanted to be doing. So for a long time, ever since the pandemic, I've been balancing these two careers, two identities, and two personalities. Until recently, when I started getting an influx of new clients for Journey with Nikita, lots of people coming to me with the same themes, saying, "I'm on the cusp between this job and that job. I want to leave my marriage, but I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I want to move abroad, but I'm unclear of the unknown." And I started realizing that this was so much more than just me attracting my ideal client. It was actually my ideal clients mirroring me. And it was only when working with my coach that I came to realize that that's exactly what I was doing. I was manifesting the same type of clients to me that were going through similar circumstances. So when I say this, I don't mean that I'm going through a relationship breakdown or that I want to immigrate abroad. What I mean is the transition phase. The theme was very much hanging in between two states of being, and that's when I realized that that's exactly what I was doing. My coach then went on to say, imagine if you were to cross that bridge and you were to cross over from your karma to your dharma. What kind of clients would you then attract? And I said, wow, I hadn't even considered that maybe then I would get people who are really ready to step into their Dharma, those that perhaps have crossed and are now looking for guidance, rather than those that are hanging in the middle or waiting on the other side like I was for so long. So when we think about karma, we don't just think about past lives, and it's definitely not punishment. Of course, past lives does come into it, but in the karma that I teach people, it's very much about this life. It's the emotional residue that we all carry that consists of our beliefs, patterns, and pain, all of the wounds that we've been carrying from childhood, ancestry, and then, yes, of course, previous lives before this one. When I was living in my karma, I didn't even know it. As I said, I was in denial. I was constantly overgiving, proving, and always exhausted. I was seemingly running a successful business, so on paper I looked great, but inside I felt isolated and alone. And I kept on attracting people that were going through similar circumstances to me. Now that's not to say that's a bad thing, of course. I love supporting all kinds of clients, but it was so fascinating to see that I was attracting people that were mirroring me. Most of the time, I felt anxious and disconnected from my body, and I would go as far as saying, at some points, I even felt numb. That's karma. It's the loop. It's the lessons that keep on repeating until we finally pause and say, enough is enough. It's only when we learn from those lessons that we can then move on. Many people come to me and say, I want to cross over from karma to dharma, but I don't know what my dharma is. And what I say to that is, you don't need to know. All you have to know is that there is something for you. There is an unleashed potential within you that is waiting to come out. You don't need to know the how. In fact, the how is coming from your logical mind, which is associated with the lower self. The lower self wants to know the how because it wants to be prepared. It doesn't like the unknown. It's trying to keep you safe and therefore is exercising caution. But the higher self has innate wisdom and completely trusts itself and the universe. So I knew that I was meant for something more. I didn't necessarily know what, but I had an idea. I'm aware that some of you listening to this don't even have an idea, and I completely empathize with you because I remember before COVID being in that phase. In fact, I call it now the dark night of the soul. I went through a good few years of feeling really restless. I'm trying to think of the right word because I can't. It was such an unbearable phase that I wouldn't wish it on anyone, yet I know that every soul has to go through it, especially before an awakening. Again, I was seemingly successful, I had money, I had material possessions, yet still within I felt like I had potential and a purpose that was untapped. I would spend my afternoons sleeping and then waking up late. Every day I would lie around in my pajamas. I was almost in a state of depression. I'd get anxious about going out, and I felt like I had nothing to offer the world. I kept asking myself, is this it? I know that a lot of people get to this stage, especially if they've had success early on in life, as I did. And that's exactly why I want to support those people. So recently, I made the very brave and very courageous decision of closing down my beloved dance school. I say beloved because it's my baby. I started it 20 years ago when I was just 20 myself. I was naive. I was barely a young adult, and I formed a company in a niche style of dance without any certainty that it was going to be successful. In fact, I didn't even care. All I knew was that I had a passion and I wanted to turn that passion into a profession. I thought that that would be my life and that I would never need anything else until pre-COVID, when I started that experience, as I said, I named the dark night of the soul. And then it was during COVID that I conceived Journey with Nikita, when I was by myself in isolation, unable to go out, unable to go into my dance studio and teach classes. That's when I had this brainwave idea, and then I started executing it step by step. I built a whole brand from scratch. Although I'd done it before, it was very different in a time 20 years ago where there was very limited internet, there was no social media, just one email address, and yet here felt like I had everything at my fingertips. I designed my own website, I set up my own social media channels, I created this podcast, and I did everything from a heart-centered space. It was done with love. It wasn't done with ego. It wasn't about proving anything. It was about helping others, about being of service. In fact, I'd go as far as saying it felt very godly. I remember the first time I told my husband about my new venture. I showed him a PowerPoint presentation on our TV in the living room. It was about half an hour, and I said, just sit quietly and watch, listen, and see how much you can take from my presentation. Half an hour later, he was speechless. He said that he was completely blown away by my vision. I said that I was going to help people with personal development, spirituality, and combining NLP with a spiritual approach, something that's never been done before. He said that I was going to go very far and that he believed in me, and that's meant so much to me. And then I carried on balancing both businesses for the next few years, up until 2025, when we celebrated our dance school's 20th anniversary. It was such a wonderful occasion. So many students who had grown up with me from childhood, now in their adult years, they came to see me. Some of them are still performing or teaching and even still learning through my dance school. So it was so nostalgic seeing them all come together and talking about the memories that we've all created over the last 2 decades. So many people asked me, Nikita, how did you start a business at such a young age? How did you have so much clarity and vision? And my reply is always the same, that I followed my calling. But what was interesting was that in that time, I wasn't following my new calling. As I said, I was balancing both companies, and it was very hard to do that. I had no free time, no social life, and very little energy left for anything other than work. In fact, there were days where I would even go to sleep in my clothes because putting my pajamas on just seemed like too much of a chore. I started neglecting the housework, my marriage, everything started crumbling around me because I was working so hard to sustain 2 businesses with very little staff, support or resources. I knew that I couldn't go on like that, but I was determined not to let my baby down. It had served me for 2 decades, and I felt like a failure if I did let it down. There was also a huge amount of guilt, and this is something that's very common. If you're in a situation where you are entangled in your karma, then you might associate with this. I felt very guilty towards the people that I was letting down. When I announced officially that I was going to step back, a lot of students and their parents showed disappointment, and I felt that I owed them something. I felt that I was responsible and that I needed to show up regardless of what was going on in my life. And now I look back and I think that's not right at all. I mean, I could have gone through health problems, which actually I did. When I first launched my studio when I was about 26, I did go through significant health challenges, yet despite that I continued. I could have got married. Well, yes, I did. And yet I still continued, even after. In fact, I didn't even go on a honeymoon because I felt so guilty about leaving the classes. So I ended up going a few months later, just so that I could ensure that I didn't let anybody down. That's what karma is. It pulls you in. It makes you feel like you owe people something, even if they're not expecting it from you. And finally, I made this decision to let my dance school go and to wholeheartedly devote myself to Journey with Nikita. Now my voice has slowed down because this was the hardest decision that I have ever made, and I probably will ever have to make. And if you're listening to this now, there's a decision that you need to make. Whether you're going through it right now or whether you're going to go through it in the future, one day you will be on this cusp, and it's a icky, uncomfortable feeling. It's frustrating. It's restless. It's really hard. It's probably the most challenging thing that any human being will ever have to go through. The cusp between karma and dharma. So we've talked a lot now about what karma is, and I've given you some of my real life examples. Obligation. So it's about being of service, but then feeling obliged to be of service. I remember one of my clients, she was a nurse, and she said to me that she feels like sometimes she's a servant because she's giving so much of herself from an empty cup. And then she's going home, eating, sleeping, and then waking up and doing it all over again. And it didn't feel good to her. She only had the weekends free to just do her housework, keep on top of her chores, barely see any friends, and then she was back to work again Monday. She did very long shifts with very little reward, and all of that would have been okay if she was lit up doing it. But I said to her, the fact that you're feeling this exhausted and like you're using the word servant, that's quite a big word to use. It means that you're in your karma. And she couldn't believe that I was saying that because she had truly thought that her purpose was to be a nurse. But it's only through coaching her that she came to realize that actually she was entangled in karma the same way I was entangled with the dance school, and it wasn't lighting me up. And she had the same position, the same situation. So we worked through a lot of limiting beliefs. We extracted a lot of her conditioning from her parents, her teachers, society, and we really started to pull back the layers. And when she came to the end of her sessions, she came to the conclusion that actually she never wanted to be a nurse. Again, she was in denial like I was, that we'd convinced ourselves that this is what we were supposed to be doing. But the truth was that she wanted to do something else, which also required her medical background, and that's probably why she was drawn to study medicine in the first place. But it wasn't just to be a nurse. And I think when we think about careers, the careers guidance that we get is very broad. So if we're lucky enough to even get any careers guidance, that is. So medicine, for example, is a huge field. There's so much that one can do in it. But if we are not guided or coached, we don't ever find our niche. And that's the problem. People become doctors or nurses or pharmacists or in any other field, but they don't actually use the skills that are really natural to them. They just learn things from textbooks and then end up delivering those things. And what Dharma is about being true to your natural qualities and your personality. So with this client, the nurse, I was able to really pull back the layers to reveal her personality. She didn't know who she was. She didn't know her favorite color, her favorite food, her favorite, books to read. Everything had been pushed to a side. All her own personal preferences were secondary. Her primary focus was being of service to her patients. And that's very common. We find that in people that are in relationships. They live for their partner or they live for their children. They live for their job. And their identity becomes their environment, whereas actually there's more to us than that. There's a beautiful soul within us that's not only living this life, but has also lived previous lives. It's the same soul that's carried forward from life to life to life to life. And so when we don't get to know ourselves, we don't know who we are, and therefore we don't know why we're here. And so Dharma's all about finding who you are, first of all, which is the most important thing. And the second most important thing is why you are here on earth. So Dharma, in essence, is your soul's truth. It's not a job title. If you're seeing people on Instagram say, find your life purpose, it's going to be a title, it's going to be a statement. Please ignore those. It's not a job title. Dharma is very much a state of being. It's about being in pure alignment with yourself. It's when your inner world and your outer world start to create congruency. They begin to match. And it's when you stop chasing things and you start allowing things to happen. So if you're in a job that you feel like you're having to really hustle in, it's not right for you. And although I said it's not just career, if you're in a marriage, it's hard work. If you're in a, anything that you're going through, if you're in a town or a city or a country that doesn't align with you, that means it's not part of your Dharma. So then people always ask me, so what are we supposed to do then? Are we supposed to leave our marriage? Are we supposed to leave our town? Are we supposed to immigrate? No. We're supposed to find out A, who we are, and B, why we are here. And then when you start to align those two things, you then ask yourself, what do I need to make it happen? So in my case, for example, I know myself that I'm a very bubbly person. I love people. I'm very funny. I'm very engaging. The second thing is I know why I'm here. I'm here to help people find their soul's purpose, their Dharma. So in order for me to do those two things, know myself and know why I'm here, I need to have an environment that serves me. So being near nature is very beneficial for me because it's therapeutic for me personally, but also when I invite my clients over for coaching, it's therapeutic for them as well. And it has a positive impact on our sessions. For me, secondly, having a big house is very important. Why? Not because I need a big house, I don't have children or anything, I just myself and my husband, but having a big house was important to me because I wanted to open up my house for my clients to run retreat days, which is exactly what I do. So it's about how does my environment support me to be the best version of myself. If working in an office at a desk is going to make sure that you are at your most productive state when you're working, that's what you need. My husband, for example, he has to be in an office at a desk with a comfortable chair, with his coffee, with his water, and that's how he works comfortably and he's the most productive. Whereas for me, I can't think of anything worse. I have to have my laptop on my lap. I sit on my sofa, my dining table. I can go to the forest and work. I can work at my health club. That's how I feel more relaxed and comfortable. So each one of us has a choice of aligning our environment to our preferences so that we can be the best version of ourselves and we can show up and contribute in the best way possible. And then your limiting beliefs are going to start coming up. So you're going to say to me, well, I can't afford a bigger house, or I don't live near a forest, or XYZ. All of the objections that are coming from the lower self. And to that I will say, let's push those objections to a side. Because if your soul is truly meant to be doing something, then it will figure out a way to do it. Your soul is so much more powerful than your mind. I'm going to say that again because I don't think enough people say this. Your soul is so much more powerful than your mind. The mind is intellectual, it's analytical, it's rational, it's logical. All of those facets are excellent. They're really needed. They're very beneficial. But your soul is so much more powerful than your mind. So when you trust your soul, it will lead the way. You've heard of people having miracles. They're not miracles really. They're just in alignment with their soul, because as soon as you say, right, I'm going to do this, if it's meant to be that way, everything will manifest itself to make sure that that happens. So when I made that decision to step into my Dharma, everything started unfolding and falling into place. I started feeling peace with myself, and I started really tapping into my intuition. And now I guide other people to have that same transformation. How do you know if you're ready to transition from your karma to your Dharma? Maybe you feel like your old life doesn't fit you anymore. Maybe you feel like you're really craving some depth, truth, or connection. Perhaps you're being drawn to healing, even if you don't know why. Or maybe you're just tired of pretending that everything is okay when it's not. If that's you, then I see you because I was you. Your soul is not confused. It's just been buried under years of conditioning, pain, and pressure. But here is your invitation to come home to yourself. You can live in peace and you can live in purpose. If this message resonates, please follow me, subscribe, like, comment, stay connected with me on social media. Journey with Nikita, sending you lots of good wishes for your transition from karma to Dharma. Namaste.